Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, Stephen Lenman. He is the creator and owner of Stephen Lenman blog, and I am very happy to have him back on the X22 Report Spotlight. He's going to talk about the Middle East. We're going to talk about what is going on in Orlando, what's going on with the elections. Stephen, welcome back to the X22 Report Spotlight.
Oh, Dave, it's great to be on with you again. You've got a great program. You do a terrific job, and it's an honor for me to be on with you.
Well, actually, it's an honor. It's an honor for me to have you on here, and I really appreciate it. And I wanted to start off with Syria. Now, there were 50 U.S. diplomats that signed this letter that the U.S. needs to change course instead of going after the Islamic State, allegedly, to go after Assad now. Now, the last time we spoke, we were talking about the ceasefire. We were talking about peace in Syria. And here we are in June. Is there peace in Syria? And my next question after that is, why are these 50 U.S. diplomats coming out now saying that we need to go after Assad?
Oh, on the latter point, Dave, I think it's very interesting. I'm not surprised that you've got a State Department, you got an administration infested with neocons, and these people coming out are really probably predominantly neocons. Maybe they're all neocons. What surprises me is I'm sure they've had this view all along. The war is in its sixth year. Its sixth year began in March 2011. So why are they coming out now with half a year left in Obama's tenure? Why did they come out a year ago, 2 years ago? It's almost a futile effort. Maybe they're just massaging the ground, manipulating things for a Clinton presidency, knowing full well if she gets to be Obama's successor, she'll come in with guns blazing, which is what I expect, because she orchestrated the war on Syria in the first place, and calling it a civil war is a gross mischaracterization. It's Obama's war. It's naked aggression. It's a war of choice. It's the same old dirty game of wanting an independent sovereign state eliminated and tyranny, U.S.-controlled tyranny, replacing it, no matter what happens to the people in the country. And we've seen it in country after country for so long, Dave. I mean, just in more recent times, Yugoslavia in 1999, or the Balkans in the 1990s, and then all the post 9/11 wars. And the first point again was, the first
question is, the last time we spoke, there was a ceasefire deal, and it's still kind of going on. Do you think the United States still wants peace in Syria?
I absolutely believe peace is the last thing America wants in Syria, and probably most any place else, certainly any other country it targets. And my evidence is very simple. Look at all the post 9/11 wars beginning in October 2001. Number one, they were all wars and continue to be wars of aggression. And my point is, they all continue to rage. There is no prospect for peace in any of these countries targeted, from Afghanistan to Iraq to Libya, to Syria, to the Ukrainian situation, to America's partnership with Israel affecting Palestine. That goes back decades before 9/11. There's simply no prospect for peace anywhere. America wants war. Israel wants war. America's rogue allies want war. And peace and stability defeats America's imperial agenda. War and violence and the rest of it serve it.
So let me ask you, the Russian forces are helping Assad right now. The United States is there with the coalition forces. Now, they're both supposedly fighting terrorism. What are both of these forces doing in this country at this point? Is the U.S. really fighting terrorism?
America supports terrorism, Dave, and I know we've discussed this before. ISIS is a U.S. creation. All of these terrorist groups, I know the names, but I need to look at them to pronounce them accurately. I mean, there are lots of them that not just in the Middle East, but in other places. Boko Haram in Nigeria is really U.S. created. ISIS in Nigeria. How many people are aware of that? And you could take one group after another. They're all the same. You could call them death squads. You could call them terrorists. You could call them anything they want. I call them imperial foot soldiers. America created them, beginning at least going back to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 1980s, fighting Soviet Russia. And these groups are all the same, continuing under different names to this day. So the last thing America wants is these groups eliminated. It wants them to support it, foster it, increase in the violence that they're committing. So when America bombs targets in Syria illegally because nobody invited them to do it, in Iraq because it's pressured the Iraq government to let them come in, they're not bombing terrorist targets. They're bombing government targets and infrastructure targets on the pretext of fighting terrorism, which America isn't doing, hasn't been doing, won't do. And Americans are none the wiser because the media, I call the scoundrel media, misreport propaganda instead of real news and information.
You know what's very, very interesting out in Syria is that the U.S. has been there bombing for over a year now. And all of a sudden, we see them bring in 2 aircraft carriers into the Mediterranean with their strike groups. And we see that, I think it was Ashton Carter that went around to all the European nations asking these nations to bring in more troops, more military assets. Then we get word there are special op teams on the ground from the UK, from the United States, from France, all in Syria. Why are they bringing in all these forces if the Islamic State is losing ground because of Russia and Syria? Why all of a sudden is there a big push to bring all of these forces and to bring more military assets into the region?
You got Germany in there now too.
Oh, Dave. Germany, yes, I forgot about that.
That's really shocking. I mean, who's next? Spain, Italy? I don't know who's next. It really is shocking. And of course, it's not just fighting the Islamic State. I always call them ISIS. Just use one word rather than several. The Islamic State, ISIS or ISIL, and I just stuck on ISIS. Probably I picked the wrong one because I guess ISIS is what, the Greek goddess of something or other. I forget. So probably ISIL or the Islamic State would have been different, but they really were the Mujahideen back in Afghanistan and so on and so forth. And again, I mean, these groups are being supported, and the idea of a ceasefire, a peace talks. I've written a number of articles calling the whole thing farcical, a complete hoax. Because America, I mean, we can see what's going on. The ceasefire went into effect. For some reason, I remember the date, midnight, February 26th. So effectively the beginning overnight, February 27th this year. So here we are now in June, getting into late June, heading for July. And there's absolutely no progress whatever toward a ceasefire, no progress toward peace. The whole thing is farcical, illegitimate. And it's because America wants war, not peace. It's as simple as that. If anybody wants to know why there's no prospect for peace in Syria or Iraq or any of these countries, it's simply because America wants war, not peace. It really comes down to that bottom line.
Do you think the United States is actually planning to do something in Syria to really now go after Assad? Or do you think they're just going to keep going the way they're going? Or do you think they're going to make their move this summer?
I'm convinced that the conflict will continue until America either defeats Assad or Russia
into no man's land.
Oh, we get interference.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from.
He was invited to join.
I'll just talk over it.
But left in search of potable water.
America will continue the war in Syria until Assad is deposed and Syria is maybe turned to rubble. And the idea is to petition it and loot its resources and exploit its people. It'll continue the conflict endlessly unless Russia changes tactics and gets more aggressive in doing what Putin has said a number of times, not supporting Assad, but protecting Syria's sovereignty and respecting its territorial integrity. And he said that in words to this effect a number of times. In an article that I'm putting out today, I cited him again saying this. This is the game, and he's concerned because if Syria falls, then Iran is isolated, and the same thing will happen to Iran. I mean, we've seen it against Iraq, Syria, Libya, Iran is the big one. Iran will be isolated and targeted the same way. Lebanon, of course, a very weak country with a few million people. Lebanon's sovereignty will be gone. Palestine will be gone. The Middle East will be gone. And then Central Asia is next. Russia's heartland will be targeted. Putin knows all this. So if there's one main reason that he wanted to intervene in Syria was to protect Russia from being targeted the same way, better to fight ISIS and these other terrorist groups in the Middle East than to fight them in Russia. And I think that's his number one concern. So what I think possibly could happen, and I hope it will happen, and in several of my articles, I literally urged him to do it, get more aggressive, reinstate the aerial operation he had beginning last September 30, increase it instead of cutting it down, bring it back and increase it and go all out to crush all of the terrorist groups in Syria, fighting the Syrian people, fighting the nation and the people and killing civilians, and go all out to crush them and send a message to Washington that if you don't like what we're doing and you think you're going to target us to get us to stop, well, then you better think again, because we've already proved to you that we have considerable military might. And if you want to take us on, which I don't think you really want to do, because America likes waging wars against countries that can walk over, it's a little reluctant to attack a country that can fight back. And Russia can indeed fight back. And China can indeed fight back. And America has never gone to war with a country that would pose a threat to itself. And I don't think America will confront Russia belligerently. Russia can match America blow for blow. And there have been statements made to that effect that America can literally turn Russia to rubble and kill all of its people, and America in turn will be turned to Russia, its cities turned incinerated. Not just one or two or three, but all of its cities from coast to coast incinerated and millions of its people killed. Would America's dare risk that? I don't think so, Dave.
What do you think about the neocons? Do you think they would risk it?
They're around and they scare me, and a Hillary Clinton presidency absolutely terrifies me. I tell people to forget her agenda. There are people who think it'd be wonderful for a woman to be president. I say, yeah, sure it would be. Just like it's wonderful to have a black person as president. But what's important is to have a good person as president. Somebody who respects the rule of law, somebody who respects democracy, somebody who wants peace and not war. And I'm afraid that's not the case with Obama or Hillary Clinton. And it's as horrible as a Trump presidency would be. And I think he will continue all of these wars. Hillary Clinton literally puts the risk of World War III, and I put it in these terms in an article out today. It would literally make World War III a coin flip if she's president. In other words, 50-50. And that's a risk I don't want to take. I mean, I think she's psychopathically challenged, and she may want to do something that maybe somebody else wouldn't want to do. I think Trump is mainly interested in making money. So anything that would divert from that, I think he wouldn't be too eager to get into. At the same time, there's no question he'll continue the ongoing wars and probably start new ones. Would he start a war with Russia? I think he might hesitate doing that. Clinton in her madness might do it.
Do you think the establishment would allow Trump to be president? Do you think they're going to allow it to go that far?
Well, that's a very good question. I wrote an article earlier about if it looked like he would win, maybe he would be at serious risk of assassinations. I can't imagine he isn't well aware of this. I think Colin Powell was asked to run for the presidency before Obama was ever asked. So no, he could have been the president instead of Obama, and he turned it down. I think he turned it down mainly fearing that he might be assassinated if he dared go against the system, the entrenched system, and maybe he wanted to do some things that were different than the way things are going now. So he was scared that he could become president, but if he did diverge a little bit more than the people really in power wanted him to, that he could end up another Jack Kennedy. So he turned it down, and he never became president. Obama took it. Absolutely willing to go along with the dirty system. And of course, he had no fear. He strongly supported. And Clinton would be strongly supported. I think Trump would basically go along with the system if he gets in power. They would give him a little wiggle room, maybe more than they would somebody else, but only a little bit, Dave. And if he went beyond that wiggle room, I think he would. He's too smart to realize that his life would be in danger if he did it. So we'd see. But I don't think he's going to win, Dave. I think the system is going to be rigged to make Clinton president.
Stephen, there are other individuals saying that Obama might declare a state of emergency and postpone the elections, maybe because of an event or an economic calamity or something like that. Do you see anything like that happening?
Well, I haven't seen any evidence to that effect so far. I mean, anything is possible. 9/11 came out of the blue. That shocked me. And I mean, even I knew something was fishy from the outset, but I didn't know what it was. But you know, you never expect stuff like this. I mean, now false flags. We'll get into Orlando after we finish what we're talking about now. But I mean, every time I see one of these so-called terror events take place, the first thing I say is, "Aha! Another false flag." So I mean, anything is possible. When Obama did do something I wouldn't expect, who knows? Maybe so. But I would expect things will go on and the election will take place because I think, again, the system is rigged to make Hillary president and keep Trump from getting the high office. And I think we pretty much know what's going to happen if she becomes president. She will exceed the violence and the wars that Obama is waging right now. I call the Bush worse than Clinton, the horrors that he was responsible for, a lot more than wars. And people don't realize the wars he was raging during the 1990s. I mean, just horrible. I mean, the stuff going on against Iraq and the Balkan Wars and so on. But Bush exceeded his extremism, and Obama exceeded Bush's extremism, and Clinton absolutely will exceed Obama's extremism. I would imagine Trump would at least match it, but Clinton will exceed it. And my fear is World War III.
Let's move on to the false flag, which I'm calling the Orlando shooting a false flag, and many other people are calling it a false flag. And I believe you're looking at the same situation, saying this could be a false flag. What do you make of the Orlando shooting?
Well, there's no question. I think the evidence is overwhelming. You go back to the more recent previous ones. The 9/11 absolutely was a false flag. Overwhelming evidence proving it. The Boston bombers. Absolutely. I wrote volumes on the Boston bombers. Absolutely overwhelming evidence. Another false flag. San Bernardino earlier this year. Another false flag. Orlando. Sandy Hook. Adam Lanza had nothing to do with what happened. False flag. Professor Tracy from one of Florida University, I forget the precise name of his university, did extraordinary research proving, I think, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Sandy Hook was a false flag. And one of the things he pointed out was, well, there were no bodies. Where are the bodies? And one of the things he pointed out, which I quoted in an article and then repeated it in another article, was that some of the children supposedly killed at Sandy Hook sang at the 2013 Super Bowl, Dave. Now we're looking at Orlando. I mean, it's really shocking. Looking at Orlando. Where are the bodies? Where is the video evidence? Where is the blood on the streets? And I ask also, how is it possible for a single gunman to be able to kill or wound over 100 people without anybody intervening to stop him? Do you mean to say that all the people at this club just stood around waiting to be shot? Nobody dared take him on to stop him? I would say that's an absolute impossibility. Orlando was a false flag, Dave, and more evidence will come out to prove it. His father was a longtime CIA asset. The FBI went after him to try to get him involved in something like this a few years ago, and he didn't bite. So they got him to do it this time. I mean, they suckered him into doing something I don't think he had any intention of wanting to do. What was on his mind, I have no idea. And all of the stuff they're saying about him, including his 9/11, his 911 calls and so on, I think all of this stuff is made up, phony. I mean, they can tell you anything you want to know. And I said in a couple of articles that the only thing we know about Orlando is what authorities are telling us, Dave. And we know that what authorities tell us in all these type of events and all things related to them, all the wars, are bald-faced lies, misinformation, big lies, bald-faced lies, nothing about them truthful, and the scoundrel media repeating them. And when this stuff gets repeated often enough, people believe it. Well, I don't believe it, and I encourage everybody not to believe it.
You know, the FBI, you mentioned the 911 calls. They released the partial transcript yesterday, and they redacted a lot of the information from the printed transcript of the call. And then the people said, well, that's ridiculous. We want the full transcript. So they released the full transcript with all, I guess, the information that was in there. Why aren't they playing the real recordings from the person?
Well, to me, it's so simple to see what the FBI would do. This guy was obviously set up. He was what's called a convenient patsy, just like all the other other 9/11, other false flag name perpetrators who had nothing to do with what happened, including Bin Laden with 9/11. He died in December 2001.
Right.
He was from natural causes. He was never around when he was sick. He was dying in a Pakistani hospital when 9/11 took place. Had nothing to do with it. But we make up this stuff. But if the FBI, I don't know why they hesitated releasing anything, because you could simply write a script, have a voice recreated. I mean, technology is wonderful today, Dave. You could have voice recreating the sound of what Omar Mateen would sound like if he was speaking for himself, and say anything the FBI wanted said, even though Mateen may have not said it at all. I mean, I'm wondering, did he ever call 911? My guess is he never did. But I think it's really easy as pie to create something like this. They did this with Bin Laden. They created phony videotapes that when they were analyzed, it was proved that the images that were shown wasn't Bin Laden at all. It was a false image electronically created to look like Bin Laden, but there were things that was picked up on the tape to prove that it was phony. So the tape could be just as phony about what Omar had to say, when in fact he probably never made a tape, never called 911, never said anything. And of course he was killed, Dave. Dead men tell no tales.
That's true. And I think they didn't want to release any of the recordings, even if they doctored the recordings, because people would analyze it and look into it. And I think what the FBI did, I think they did a very interesting type of trick where they released a portion of the written transcript and then had the people complain about it and then release the full transcript and say, okay, are you satisfied? And it seems like everyone just forgot about the recordings.
Oh boy, I haven't forgotten about them. Again, I think it's all phony baloney, to put it very simply. I don't trust anything from the government at any level. Certainly don't trust the FBI or the CIA. You're trusting a criminal class, or what I call the bipartisan criminal class in Washington.
What do you think they were using this false flag for? Do you think it was for getting into more of a war in Syria, or do you think it was being used for gun control, or both, or something else?
I don't think there's going to be any gun control. I think, and even if there was, I mean, if people want to get guns, I'm worried about guns in the hands of people who really do a lot of damage with them, not individuals. I mean, in my own city of Chicago, there are people shot, I think, every single day by, lone actors, whatever the reasons are, robberies or whatever, people killing each other. And you almost never hear about any of this stuff. I mean, it's horrible stuff going on, and I wish there was a way to stop it. But I'm worried about the guns in the hands of governments and regimes and so on. And the FBI and police. Police alone murder over 1,000 people in America every year. And when do you ever see a cop indicted and convicted and in prison for committing cold-blooded murder? I'm worried about guns in the hands of these people. But if you ban guns, people can get guns very easily. There's no problem at all. Chicago has ordinances against guns, and there are guns all over the place in Chicago. So if they ban guns in America, which they would never do, because the NRA is too powerful, even if they put a few restrictions on it, people could get guns very easily. So I don't expect any of that to happen.
You talked about the police, and I just have a question for you. Yesterday, the Supreme Court came out with a ruling about police, that the police don't have to know about the law, They don't have to understand the law to enforce the law. Does that make any sense?
It makes no sense to me at all. And the Supreme Court is infested with right-wing types, even the ones who are supposedly to the left of center. They basically support the system, Dave. So we have either outright right-wing justices. The federal courts all of the courts are bad, but the federal courts are just terrible at all levels. The Supreme Court and the appeals courts and the district level courts. You've got them infested with right-wing types that support the kind of system that does so much harm to so many people and supports the people that are exploiting people and doing damage on an incredible scale, whether it's waging wars or enforcing police state harshness. And the reason these false flags take place is to scare people enough to go along with the imperial wars that America once fought and to give up their liberties on the illusion of having more freedoms. And the more of these false flags we see, the more of our rights are being lost and the more wars that are being waged. And the end game, I fear, is World War III and full-blown tyranny in America. I'm glad I'm not young, Dave, because I have nothing to look forward to. I probably would have a short life.
Stephen, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people see your work?
Oh, very simple. Just go to my blog, and it's so simple to go there. Just Google my last name, Lendman, Lendman. When I'm well, I put up new articles every day. Just Lendman, Lendman. There aren't many Lendmans around, and all my articles are there. My email address is on the bottom of every article. Anybody wants to email me, feel free to do it, and I will answer everybody, unless you call me a son of a bitch.
Once again, thank you for being on the X22 Report Spotlight.
Oh, thank you, Dave.